Whoa, it's the 1980s, and the first ARM processor has just been summoned into existence at the Wizard School of VLSI Technology. ARM is a little quirky, though. The processors of the time were hot, heavy, and inefficient, whereas ARM is less powerful, but much more efficient. This allowed the processor to be in things other than the desktop. But we gotta wait a bit, because right now, ARM chips are a new technology, and are still half-baked.
In today's world, people have a pressing need to communicate and get information, wherever they are. The new Envoy personal wireless communicator.
A decade later, IBM develops the first ever smartphone. IBM Simon is my favorite piece of technology ever. The Simon is so ahead of its time, it's hard not to believe the people over at IBM have a time machine. It's a literal smartphone. Calls, texts, written messages, notes, calculator, calendar, and schedule, and even remote desktop, sorta? For 1994, it was like witchcraft. Also, $3,000. Now this is still an x86 based device, and in one more decade, ARM would finally be ready. Soon the modern smartphone would change the world. But for now, one more side note. As the prospect of mobile desktop computers looms on the horizon, scientists and wizards alike begin developing a way to cut down the amount of space this theoretical device would take. More specifically, the video card. You see, one of the biggest and bulkiest components of the computer is the video card. If engineers could find a way to cut down the size of the video card, or do away with it completely, computers could be mobile. Maybe even fit in someone's pocket. In 2004, ARM is finally out of the oven, and Qualcomm thinks they can make a mobile chipset. And then they do. And in July of 2004, Qualcomm released the most significant chip in over 30 years. This chip, developed in my hometown by the way, takes the most cutting-edge developments in computing, and combines them to make the first ever integrated GPU. This means the GPU is no longer on a bulky card, it was inside of the CPU itself, at the expense of some computing power. With the cursed video card gone, mobile computing was about to go absolutely ham wild.
We're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device.
Whether you like Apple or not, the iPhone changed the world. It was not technically the first smartphone, but it was the first one worth using. The mobile desktop was finally here, and this was just the beginning. From this point on, smartphones just go nuts, all shapes, sizes, and looks. You see, the mobile market is still young, and so companies don't really know what people wanted, so they just started throwing shit at consumers to see what stuck. We got a 1080p display in 2012, we got slim phones, wide phones, this one's rounded, this one's really rounded, this one's massive, and there were small ones. We can't forget about the projector phone, and my personal favorite, the modular phone. You can switch the parts around like a PC. Unfortunately, that never took off. Then they took out the headphone jack to sell $200 earbuds, those bastards. By 2018, phone manufacturers figure out what people want. Lame, simplistic, subtle glass rectangles. By present day, there's really no change anymore, and the most exciting innovations are how much the camera can zoom, and how shiny the phone is what the average simpleton would say. Are you tired of consuming content in an aspect ratio that isn't useless? Do you want to buy something with the durability of a potato chip? Do you have $2,000 to burn? Introducing the folding phone. In 2018, a company called Royale made the FlexPi. Foldables were a really cool tech demo. That's about it. And don't even get me started on the stupid clamshell foldables. Quietly, in the background, a disease spreads, a blight among the human race. Slowly makes its presence known on the mobile market. Gamers. You see, as mobile computing got more and more powerful, game developers had an idea. What if you take Game for Desktop and put into smaller, less powerful desktop? It worked, and mobile games were surprisingly successful. In 2017, Razer saw a new demographic of Cro-Magnon to sell their glowing e-waste, and they too released a gaming phone. It was just a phone that had a light up bit on the back, except it also had a 120Hz refresh rate, which, jokes aside, that's really impressive for 2017. It sold well, and Razer accidentally started the most brain-cell efficient arms race in history. The subsequently released phones by other brands would try to one-up each other in specs, and we got the Asus ROG phone the following year, with physical gaming buttons, then phones with a fan, then 144Hz, then clip-on fans, then as much RAM as my PC, 500Hz touch refresh rate sampling, 2-day-long batteries, 18GB of RAM, 165Hz screen, 6 touch triggers, 3 clip-on fans, 2 USB-C ports. Somehow, the idea of the mobile desktop was partially realized because of people's willingness to pay $900 to have 16% more FPS in PUBG Mobile. With the absurdity of the specs arm race soon reaching a ceiling, there's one question on everyone's mind. Why can't we put in actual graphics cards in phones? You see, since 2004, phones have used integrated graphics, or what's called an SoC, System on a Chip. The GPU, CPU, RAM, and storage are all on a single, efficient chip. So why haven't dedicated graphics come to mobile yet? Well, the answer is simple. It wouldn't work. Let's say for a moment that we actually got a dedicated GPU to fit on a phone, and we figured out how the power delivery and cooling, and we figured all that out somehow. This phone would still actually be slower than your average flagship SoC. You see, there's a misconception that integrated graphics are worse than a dedicated GPU, but that's simply not the case. SoCs are smaller, therefore much cheaper and more efficient. A dedicated GPU is further from the CPU, meaning more power delivery, which means more heat, slowing it down. There would also be a significant increase in price from the extra rare metals required to construct a larger system. Yes, we could strap like an RTX 3090 to a phone and a power supply, but that kind of defeats the purpose of a mobile phone. And besides, we don't need a graphics card to run PUBG Mobile when your average flagship SoC can do that just fine. With the arrival of augmented reality glasses on the horizon, mobile phones and their games may be changing forever. We may have another iPhone launch near in the future.